Hello, my name is George, and today I'll be discussing my predictions for Path of Exile 3.26, Secrets of the Atlas. Path of Exile just recently released a teaser along with 2 quality of life videos for Path of Exile, Secrets of the Atlas. I just want to throw out my predictions for what is going to be happening this update and what our new league mechanic and endgame may look like. So without further ado, let's jump right into the big question. What is Secrets of the Atlas going to be like, and what is most likely going to be the gameplay mechanic? I believe the gameplay mechanic is going to be similar to the old Elder and Shaper mechanic, where you had to follow the corruption through a series of maps until you found an Elder or Shaper Guardian. I don't think it will be presented in the same way as those were, but it will more than likely force us to run different maps to locate a secret boss or a portal. I believe with the rumors and speculations of Zana returning, this is more than likely going to be a very heavy mapping league, or at the very least a league with a lot of setups. I also believe Maven may also be involved in some way for this new league. It seems her symbol or something close to it is residing in the middle of the text behind Secrets of the Atlas. Along with that, we have 2 very different colors on both sides of the text. The left side is both white and blue, while the right is red and black. This may be a league where we see different in-game bosses interacting with each other like Cirrus and Maven. However, with the introduction of a new character, I assume we may be going through a time warp and locating Zana through her past while revisiting old maps she had once visited, giving us a much broader story about where to find Zana. This league is probably going to be the toughest challenge GGG is going to throw at us, since it has been almost a year since a real update came out for Path of Exile. I assume the mechanic for this league is going to have us choose if we will want to visit a map in the past or the future, but depending on the direction we will go, we will get a higher chance of different rewards, and every map will be different. Map 1 might give you currency and div cards if you go into the future, but if you go into the past, you might find legacy items that have a higher base stat. Similar to when GGG patches an item and there are legacy versions of that item with higher stats before a nerf. This would be probably the similar way that's presented there. There would also be downsides associated with going forward and backwards in time, causing enemies or the map itself to scale against you depending on the direction you went. This would be my prediction for the league mechanic itself, which I think would be very fun to play with, but GGG would need to streamline it so it doesn't hinder mapping, because having to click a bunch of buttons would be very fun to do. The next prediction is going to be for the buffs and nerfs to builds and mechanics. I think overall GGG will nerf almost every build, but buff very niche aspects of certain gems and unique items to cause chain reactions that you weren't able to do before. On top of that, with the new league mechanic, they will most likely introduce new base types and base mods that will cause builds to skyrocket in damage. Similar to how GGG nerfed the hell out of everything in PoE 2 and then slowly started buffing everything after, this will be similar, but instead of them buffing everything later, you will just have to discover the new items and base types they added to the game. I do think they will do major buffs to skills that have all but nearly died, i.e. Winter Orb, or at the very least rework the skill, making it more viable to use. I would love to see Stormbrand buff this league, or at least introduce something to get it working again, and I would love to see a plethora of new skills, because I'm tired of seeing the same old metas at the very top. I need something different to play with, rather than choosing between the same 3 or something niche that requires a bunch of funding and a bunch of mirrors to get off the ground. It would also be very fun if there was new currencies that added or changed influences on an item, and there was a very small chance that the item keeps the previous influence mod and adds a mod from the new influence if eligible. This means you could get the Redeemer mod on an item, let's say unaffected by chilled ground. You could then use an influence orb to change the influence to the Hunter, and the Hunter mod that gets added could be unaffected by desecrated ground. Then you take it a step further and you can recombinate an item with those mods and another item that has the Crusader mod unaffected by shock ground. Now you would have a 2 influence item with 3 separate influence mods: unaffected by chilled ground, unaffected by desecrated ground, and unaffected by shock ground. This would make the top end grind for perfect gear even better for builds. The sheer amount of combinations one could create with all these influence mods would bring a new meaning to the term mirror tier gear. For quality of life changes to 3.26, there are a few things I would like to see. First, I would love to see a backpack slot that allows certain currency to be stacked infinitely on our character, like portal or wisdom scrolls, or even a companion/pet that does it for us. I understand GGG wants us to feel the weight of every click, but I feel at some point it's no longer necessary. I would also love the ability to set up cosmetic outfits. So when I create a character and I like to use certain themes and auras, I can instantly equip an entire set without having to go searching one by one through my cosmetics. I think another big thing Path of Exile has always needed is a death screen, similar to last Epoch. I would love to know how much I got hit for and what my overkill damage was. If I had 5,000 health and I got hit with an attack that does 5,001 damage, I want to know how close I was to surviving that hit. It may be a little hard to do since Path of Exile was established a long time ago and categorizing every instance of damage may be very hard, but at the least they could do is tell us the damage type that killed us. Meaning if I got hit with a physical attack, I want to know I'm more weak to physical. This would just help the gearing towards that overall survivability of that build. You know, if every time on that build and 9 out of 10 deaths are physical, I know I need to start building towards to protect myself. In the end, I do hope a lot of what I say does come out. I think it would be very interesting and fun to see. However, at the same time, I would also like my socks to be blown off, and they deliver on something much better than I could ever predict, because as a gamer, there's nothing more fun than being shocked from a game. I hope you enjoyed listening, and tell me what you think Path of Exile 3.26 Secrets of the Atlas is going to have in store for us. Thanks for watching.